Papua New Guinea is one of the most complex countries on Earth. On a map, it sits just north of Australia, occupying the eastern half of the island of New Guinea and hundreds of surrounding islands in the southwestern Pacific. But the map only hints at its reality. This is a country where steep mountains separate communities, where rainforests hold extraordinary biodiversity, and where hundreds of distinct languages are still spoken. Papua New Guinea, often shortened to PNG, is not a small island state in the usual sense. Its land area is about 462,840 square kilometers, making it larger than many European countries. Yet much of its population lives in rural areas, connected less by highways and cities than by local traditions, clan ties, and landscapes that have shaped life for thousands of years. Geographically, Papua New Guinea is part of Oceania, and more specifically Melanesia, a region of islands and archipelagos in the southwestern Pacific. Its only land border is with Indonesia, which controls the western half of New Guinea. To the south, across the Torres Strait, lies Australia. To the east are the Solomon Islands. The capital, Port Moresby, sits on the southern coast and functions as the political and administrative center. But PNG is not dominated by one single urban core in the way some countries are. In 2023, only about 14% of the population lived in urban centers. That means the overwhelming majority of people live in villages, highland valleys, coastal settlements, or island communities, often far from the institutions and infrastructure of the capital. The country's physical geography helps explain why it is so diverse. New Guinea is dominated by rugged mountain ranges, deep valleys, dense forests, swamps, and remote coastlines. In many places, travel between neighboring communities has historically been difficult. Mountains can isolate groups only a short distance apart on the map. Over generations, that isolation allowed languages, customs, social systems, and identities to develop separately. This is why Papua New Guinea is often described as the most linguistically diverse country in the world. Around 840 known spoken languages exist there. Some are spoken by large communities, while others belong to small groups. In a world where many languages are disappearing, PNG remains a living example of how geography and culture can produce remarkable human variety. The country's modern borders are the result of colonial division. In 1884, the eastern half of New Guinea was split between two European powers. The north became German New Guinea, while the south became British New Guinea. The British-controlled area was later ceded to Australia in 1902 and reorganized as the Territory of Papua. During World War I, Australia occupied German New Guinea, and after the war it administered the Northern Territory under a League of Nations mandate. This created a situation where two neighboring territories, with different colonial histories, were governed by Australia. These colonial boundaries did not reflect the enormous cultural and linguistic complexity on the ground, but they laid the foundation for the state that would eventually become Papua New Guinea. World War II brought Papua New Guinea into the center of a major military campaign. The New Guinea campaign saw fierce fighting between Allied and Japanese forces, with the island's terrain playing a decisive role. Dense jungle, disease, supply problems, and brutal conditions made the conflict especially difficult. For local communities, the war was not an abstract global event. It arrived in villages, airfields, coastlines, and mountain tracts. After the war, in 1949, the two Australian-administered territories were united. This union was a major step toward modern statehood. But it also meant that an exceptionally diverse set of societies would be governed within one political framework, a challenge that would remain central after independence. Papua New Guinea became independent in 1975 as a Commonwealth realm. That means it retained the British monarch as head of state, represented locally by a governor-general. Its political system follows the Westminster model, with a prime minister leading the government. The national parliament is unicameral, meaning it has one legislative chamber. One distinctive feature is that members of parliament also serve as provincial leaders, linking national politics to local authority structures. In theory, this system connects communities to the central government. In practice, governing PNG is complicated by geography, diversity, limited infrastructure, and local political loyalties. National unity has to be negotiated across many identities, languages, and regions rather than assumed. Population numbers in Papua New Guinea are themselves debated. Official estimates suggest around 11.8 million people, but estimates using satellite data have placed the figure closer to 17 million. This gap matters because population size affects planning for schools, hospitals, roads, elections, and public services. In a country where many people live in remote rural areas, a traditional census can miss communities or undercount households. The uncertainty also shows how difficult it can be for a modern state to measure and serve a population spread across mountains, islands, forests, and valleys. Papua New Guinea's demographic story is not just about how many people live there, but about how hard it is to reach them. Language is one of Papua New Guinea's defining features. With about 840 known spoken languages, no single local language can represent the whole country. English is an official language and is important in government, education, and formal institutions. Tok Pisin, an English-based Creole, is widely used as a common language across different communities. It helps people communicate across linguistic boundaries that might otherwise separate them. But local languages remain deeply tied to identity, land, ancestry, and community life. In many villages, language is not simply a tool for communication, it is part of belonging. This makes PNG a place where national identity has to coexist with hundreds of smaller cultural identities. The Constitution of Papua New Guinea explicitly protects traditional communities and ways of life. This is important because much of the country's social structure is rooted in customary land, clan relationships, and local authority. For many people, land is not just property that can be bought and sold easily. It is connected to family, history, and obligation. Traditional systems can provide stability and identity, especially in places where state services are limited. But they can also complicate national development, resource projects, and political decision-making. The challenge is not simply choosing between tradition and modernity. It is finding ways for a modern state to function while respecting deeply rooted local systems. Papua New Guinea's economy depends heavily on natural resources and exports. The country has minerals, forests, fisheries, and energy resources, and these sectors can bring major revenue. But that wealth does not automatically translate into broad prosperity. Nearly 40% of the population are subsistence farmers, meaning they produce much of what they need for their own households and live relatively independently of the cash economy. This creates a split economic reality. On one side are export industries connected to global markets. On the other are rural communities whose daily lives may revolve around gardens, local exchange, and customary obligations. Development in PNG is therefore uneven, shaped by both global demand and local self-sufficiency. The natural environment of Papua New Guinea is globally significant. The country supports around 5% of all known species, an extraordinary figure for one nation. Its rainforests, mountains, reefs, wetlands, and islands create habitats for countless plants and animals, many found nowhere else. This biodiversity is both a treasure and a responsibility. Resource extraction, logging, population growth, and infrastructure expansion can place pressure on ecosystems. At the same time, many traditional communities have long-standing relationships with their land and environment. PNG's future depends partly on how it balances economic development with conservation. The question is not whether the country has natural wealth. It clearly does. The question is how that wealth is managed, protected, and shared. Religion is another major part of national life. Papua New Guinea has a large Christian majority, spread across several denominations. In March 2025, the Constitution was amended to adopt Christianity as the official state religion. This reflects the influence of churches in education, healthcare, community organization, and public life. At the same time, Christianity exists alongside a vast range of local cultures and traditions. Like many aspects of PNG, religion is layered rather than simple. The country also faces serious social and political challenges, including friction linked to diversity and the government's struggle to combat violence against women. Yet Papua New Guinea remains a remarkable example of human variety, a nation of mountains, islands, languages, traditions, resources, and identities still being woven into one state. If you found this helpful, please like this video and subscribe for more explainers.